Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome to part 3 of me building my DIY homemade 3D printed CNC machine. If you guys have not seen part 1 and part 2 of me building this machine, be sure to do that. I'll put video links down in the description below. This will be the last part of the series, and today we're going to be working on just doing some final tests and to see how this machine runs. With that being said, let's jump right into it. Okay guys, before I can start milling, I need to create the actual spoil board. That way I can actually clamp my workpieces down to the table. The idea is to create a grid-like pattern with holes, and then from the underside hammer a bunch of T-nuts into those holes, and that'll give me a good place to screw in and clamp my workpieces down. The first attempt did not go very well. As you can see, there's a little bit of a gouge in the side of the table, but that's okay because I'm going to be milling a right angle corner clamp that's going to sit right over top of that, so that part won't be seen, luckily, but it's just a spoil board. It's meant to get messed up. I'm still playing around with the speeds and the feeds in the machine and working with actual CAM software because I've never done it before, and there's a lot that goes into a CNC machine, such as the type of end mills that you use, the bits, feed rate, the plunge rate, and so on and so on. Overall, the machine runs great. I'm not trying to push it too hard because it is, after all, a 3D printed CNC machine and it's using plastic parts, so I'm still playing around with how hard I can push the machine, but I'm excited to show you guys the rest of the milling process. So the software that I'm going to be using is Fusion 360 because it has a built-in CAM software for it, and this is just a quick simulation to show you guys how this part is going to be made. This first part that we are going to be milling is just this 90-degree right angle, and this is going to be placed in the bottom left of the CNC, and this is just going to help be able to align my workpieces and clamp them down. And the main idea is to test the tolerances and just to make sure that the machine is running smoothly and nice and accurate. To check the accuracy, I'm just using my calipers, and as you can see by the reading, it's only about 7/1000ths of an inch off, which is really good. I'm very happy with that. I also measured the diameter of both the circles, and I can't find that clip for whatever reason, but they gave me about the same reading, only about 5/1000ths of an inch off. Okay guys, as you can see, my CNC machine ended up leaving marks from the first part it milled in the middle of the spoil board, and that ultimately means that my board is not perfectly flat and level. So now I'm just using a flattening end mill to flatten out the entire board, making sure it's nice and level. Also, as you guys can see, it's in a box now. I made an enclosure for the CNC. I added LED lights at the top so it's easier to see inside. I also added 2 doors that open, and I'm also using in a plexiglass door frame or door panel. That way we can see into it. I do want to make a dust shield for this CNC eventually. I just haven't gotten there yet, but for now the enclosure works great. It reduces the noise significantly, which is one of the big things for me. And I also added new drag chains, so now my wiring is nice and organized. Okay, for my last project and the final test of this CNC machine, we are going to be making a new sign for my shop, and it's basically just going to be my logo. And I'm going to be painting this board white because my logo has a white background. And then from there, we are going to be using Aura Mask, which is essentially just really wide sticky tape, and you can place it on top of the board, and then once I mill out all the letters and the design of my logo, I can come back in and paint all my letters and everything black without getting any of the black on my white paint. It actually works really well. So I'm going to show you guys how I did that process. Now that the paint is dried, I'm going to be applying the Aura mask onto the board, and you want to make sure that the board is completely dust free, that way it sticks well. And off camera, I just cut off the excess with an X-Acto knife. Also, I forgot to mention that I got all of my limit switches to start working, so right now I'm homing the machine. It took me about a week to figure out, but because I ran into a problem that I couldn't physically see, and that problem was interference. My stepper motors were causing a lot of interference, which was causing my limit switches to false trigger, and my CNC would lock up and wouldn't move. So I basically had to make the decision to go back in and rewire all of my stepper motors using shielded cable. And once I plugged everything back in, it worked great the first try, and all of my limit switches are working properly now. Now I'm just clamping my board down to the CNC, and I'm using these cam clamps, which I actually got from another YouTuber named Myers Woodshop, and he makes a lot of cool things with the CNC and other woodworking projects, so be sure to check him out. I really like the files for the cam clamps. They work really well. I think it's the most efficient way to clamp your workpiece down. You don't really scratch up your piece, or you don't have to use screws or other fasteners to hold it down, so it works really well. Okay, now that my files are loaded up, we are finally ready to start milling and to put this machine to the test. My first attempt did not go very well. um, Basically what happened was the coupler on the x-axis, the screw was a little bit loose, so the stepper motor was turning, but the ball screw was not turning. So it left a little bit of a scratch in the top left of my board. You probably can't see it very well on camera, but it's there. You'll see it later, but it's okay. We're gonna go back and I'm gonna show you guys exactly how I fixed that. But overall, the engraving came out really nice. Everything looks really nice and accurate. Right now I'm just using a 60-degree V-bit to carve out all the details in the lettering, and then later I will change it out and use an 1/8 inch spiral downcut bit to carve out the crown. I'm using a downcut bit rather than an upcut bit because it leaves a much cleaner surface finish with not a lot of chip out. As I stated before, I'm not trying to push the machine too hard at first. I'm going to have to do a bunch more testing to see actually how hard and how fast I can push the machine. But for making the crown right here, I'm doing it in 2 passes. The engraving came out really nice, so all I got to do now is paint it black, and then after that I can remove the Aura mask. Okay, so the sign came out even nicer than I anticipated, and because of that, I'm gonna make a nice little frame to go around it. I really wanted to frame it in walnut, but I'm saving the last piece of walnut that I have for a future project. So right now I just found a scrap piece of red oak, and I'm gonna be cutting 1-inch strips, and then I'm gonna take it over to the miter saw and cut 45-degree miters and make a nice little mitered frame to go around it. And to secure it, I don't want to use wood glue because I don't want a lot of wood glue squeeze out to go all over my paint. So I'm just going to secure it and attach it using brad nails. There were a few defects in the board prior to me actually painting this, which you can probably see, but I didn't really care to go back and cover everything up just because this was originally going to be a test piece, but I ended up liking it so much that I was going to turn it into a little project, so this whole thing was just kind of an afterthought. So one cool thing that actually happened to me recently is that I actually did my final project presentation over the CNC machine in my product design class, and my professor was really impressed. And now the engineering department wants me to do a research project over it, so I may or may not end up doing that, but I thought that was pretty cool. I thought the board looked a little bit thick, so right now I'm just putting a chamfer around all of the edges just to lighten it up a little bit. And then after that, I'm going to use some water-based polyurethane just to put a little clear coat protection over it. You don't want to use oil-based because it'll make the white paint really yellow, so water-based is the way to go. As you guys can see, this sign came out really nice. I really like the mitered frame that goes around it with the chamfered edges. I decided to mount this right in the middle of my pegboard, that way it creates a really nice backdrop for my videos. If any of you guys are interested in building this CNC machine yourself, I'm currently working on the plans for it, and I will be putting a link down in the description below as soon as they are complete, and you can go and check those out. And it'll contain basically all the STL files, the bill of materials, and everything you need to know to make this machine. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this series. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys on the next one.